Sports, 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 sports.
Hey there, sports fans. Welcome to Sportsball, part of the SPDM Crew of podcast. We talk about sports-related topics, but we focus on you, the fan, and what you like, whether it's a sport, team, event, sports-related news, or athlete. This week, we are going to be talking about the NFL. So we're recording this a couple days before the NFC and AFC championship games. And we're going to be talking about just the NFL season as a whole. And I'm joined by fellow podcaster Dana Jones. Welcome to the podcast. Greatly appreciate it. How's it going?
Hey, thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It's going pretty good. It's the NFL season. My fantasy team has kind of screwed me, so it's all good.
So I had two fantasy football teams this year, and I lucked out because I drafted Derrick Henry in both of them, and he paid dividends for me. Everyone thought I was crazy to draft him in the second round, but I felt like it was going to be a good fit. And too bad he was the only one that decided to come to play most of the season. It was great.
Yeah, no, everybody I had like drafted got hurt, and then I was like, because of course, everybody wanted to take McCaffrey because he knew he was going to pile on yardage and whatever, and then he got hurt, and I was like, oh, and then eventually, then you get paranoid and you dump people because you're like, I got to get because I have to have a chance.
Exactly.
And I was like, still trying to like week 12. I'm like, I got a chance. I was like, I didn't have a chance.
I was eliminated pretty early on from playoff contention for both of those, and then I just decided to move on to fantasy basketball because
there you go.
That's all I have left. But tell me a little bit about yourself and tell me a little bit about your podcast.
So, hi everyone. Anyway, my name is Dana Jones, and I'm a fitness coach and a podcast host of the Pain Free Athlete podcast. And I specialize in exploring like the mind-body connection that athletes have between themselves and their bodies, especially when it comes to the pain kind of thing. Like, so people recovering from injury, dealing with chronic pain. I share a lot of personal stories. So like it started off with me talking about migraines as a little kid and kind of how that played a part, especially in being an athlete. I do triathlon. I host a triathlon. So there's a lot of, when you're doing those kinds of things, there's a lot of repetitive injury. There's a lot of chronic injury kind of things. So, it's almost like you're a detective and helping people solve their issues. And I like helping people get healthy and get back to it.
Awesome. Well, we'll be sure to tag the podcast in our episode description, and then also when we share this on social media, we'll be sure to tag that so everybody could check it out because it's very exciting to reach out and talk to people that I haven't gotten a chance to talk to yet, or that are not like directly connected to me through, friends or family. And I'm excited to talk about the NFL because this has been quite the season so far, and we're almost at establishing who's going to be playing in the Super Bowl. But before we talk about this current season, let's talk about how you got into football in the first place.
So I'm a Gen Xer. And so that means that my TV raised me. And so my TV loved to, share sports. So I watch all kinds of sports. So my two favorite are the NFL and baseball. I just love it. And so I just always watch sports. I grew up in New Jersey. I was a Giants fan. And my mother worked in New York City, and she would always get us she would meet random people. And like, oh, I got tickets to a Giants game. Oh, we're in the end zone sitting with the family or whatever. Like, I don't even know how she was nice. Like, she'd meet somebody's mom, like Jumbo Elliott's mom. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, why are we here? Like not knowing. And then his mom would jump up and be like, you smash him, like whatever. And it was super cool. So we used to go to Giants games, and so that was like, the Parcell years, that team, still, I don't know, I'm bitter about Phil Simms because he just was like, okay. Like I wanted him to be better. Like the defense was phenomenal. But he was just like, okay.
Yeah.
And, but, they won and he's got a ring. So, I guess I can suck it and just,
just be okay with that.
Right.
I'm a Bears fan. So any type of quarterback play that is like remotely above average, I'm just going to clamor to and think, yep, this is the greatest thing ever. So
right.
I feel your pain. there. So who's the teams that you follow now?
So I like move around.
Mhm.
Well, I haven't moved in a while, but I went to, I grew up in New Jersey. So, Giants, Jets, I love the sport so much that I'm willing to watch anybody.
Mhm.
When I got down to Florida, it was weird because there was this awkward, like, you're in a void. I guess that's how people in like the, mountain area feel like before they got Denver. Well, they always got Denver, but,
Yeah.
like, when you're in the middle and there's nobody around,
Right.
you got to drive 3 hours to a game or something like that. Like
Mhm.
that's kind of how Florida was before Jacksonville got down there, and Tampa Bay. Well, Tampa, nobody paid attention to Tampa Bay because they sucked.
Because they were
But
terrible. Yeah.
yeah, but when I got to Tallahassee, I was like following the Falcons, and of course because Dion went to Florida State, which is where I went to, then it was kind of natural to watch the Falcons for a while and do that. And then for the last 30 years, I've been living in Santa Rosa, California, which is about an hour north of San Francisco. And I was Raider fan because even as a kid, I was a Raider fan because I love Roger Staubach. Or not Roger Staubach. Sorry, he was Dallas. My father would shoot me right now. But Stabler, right? Howie Long, like, Lyle Alzado was like an animal, totally super cool. Like, I always liked that. And yeah, Dallas was a bad word in my house because they were Giants fans and they were like, no, Dallas. But I like Dallas for a little bit, just because I love watching Emmett Smith. I love watching spectacles. Like I love
Yeah.
seeing like guys that go above and beyond, and you're just like, how do you do what you do? And watching Emmett Smith run how he did, watching Barry Sanders run how he did, like those guys were just like magical on the field, and I love watching magic happen. And
Mhm.
so, now that I'm out here, the Raiders moved again. So I don't get to
Well,
watch Raiders games.
but not only did they moved back, then they
Oh
decided to
yeah.
move again, and now they're just in Las Vegas. And
Yeah, people are super psycho out here because they're just like, screw them. I'm not, like only if it says Raiders, like it can't say like Las Vegas Raiders or whatever. It just has to say
it's just the
Raiders or
Raiders.
Oakland
Yeah.
Raiders, like, because that's all they care about.
Well, I mean, Oakland has had a tough go of it when it comes to sports lately because between them and the A's, who are just getting ready to just up and leave, yeah, it's
And
been a
play
tough.
in a minor league ballpark. Like
Yeah.
that's how bad it is. That's how bad that the Major League Baseball is treating the A's by
Hmm.
not letting them move,
Yeah.
is by now they're going to be playing in a minor league park, for the next year until everything's ready when they move.
I don't get what's going on in baseball right now, but that could be for another topic if you're
Oh, for
ever
sure.
interested in talking about baseball. So you mentioned some of the teams that you follow. What about any favorite players or any favorite one? Because we're in an era of sports right now where it's much easier sometimes to follow the player as opposed
Oh,
to
for sure.
following a team because
Free
before
agency, man.
well, between free agency and specifically in the NFL, you can just cut somebody. Like I'm done with you, and then you can
Right.
just go, and then somebody picks them up on the waiver wire. Obviously, when it comes to cuts, there's usually a pretty good reason for it. You're not going to find like a huge superstar that's looking to get cut. I mean,
Tree
probably yeah,
Lance.
the rough go of that one for him, but and you don't see that very often with prominent prominent players. Like I would probably say like Daniel Jones is the one that probably forced his way out. Speaking of
Really? You think
quarterbacks,
he forced his way out?
I wouldn't say forced his way out. I think that they opened the door and were like, fine, leave.
I think they
Go
had the
ahead.
door open for like 2 years and he wouldn't leave.
Well,
You
it doesn't
know,
help that the Giants paid him a crap load of money to stay, and he was like, "Okay, I'll stay right here, then that's fine."
right.
It's not lost on me that coincidentally that the Minnesota Vikings, as soon as they picked him up, it kind of went downhill from there. I'm not saying he's the reason, because I always thought the Minnesota Vikings were frauds to begin with this year, but I'm just saying there's just the correlation there,
Yeah.
prospectively.
No,
So
and poor Kirk Cousins,
yeah.
talk
Mm,
about like he's okay.
mhm.
I mean, he's probably a little bit better than okay. I mean, he, in terms of the Phil Sims meter, he's probably, higher on Phil Sims because he's definitely got a stronger arm and, those kinds of things. But like he does okay and then he just implodes. And I'm
Mhm.
not sure, if he's like secretly injured and we just don't know those things or, what's going on. But I don't know, like Minnesota was like solid, I
Mhm.
would say. They weren't fantastic, right? But definitely like, oh, you're okay.
Mhm.
You can go all right. And then when he left, I was like, oh, maybe they'll just blow up and have a good time. And then he was doing well. And then all of a sudden, I don't know, something happened with him and he went sideways and then they went sideways. And it was like, okay, you know.
Yeah, not to jump too far ahead, but I cannot believe that Atlanta just signs him to this massive deal, does him like the perception is like did him pretty dirty by
Oh,
drafting Michael Penix, which
that was
you know,
mean.
it was mean, and Kirk took that personally because that's what Kirk Cousins does. Even though, does he not remember that he got drafted in the same quarterback class as RG3, like to the same team? Like he doesn't remember that at
Yeah,
all?
well, a lot of people have a little amnesia when it comes to that.
Oh yeah, for self-awareness is not anybody's gift, unfortunately, sometimes. So, but I can't believe that the Falcons are just going to cut him loose after this.
Well, I mean, there's so much money.
Oh yeah.
And so it's okay, I guess, to just, let people go. I mean, look how much Russell made,
Oh,
going to Denver, right? I
mhm.
mean, he set as long as he's smart and he did all the investment stuff, he set his kids are set, for a long time and he's making money. and and that's the thing. It's like, and clearly, obviously, Denver wasn't a good place for him.
No.
I don't even understand what happened there, because it was just plain old nightmare, but it's people are going to do whatever they're going to do. And that's it. It's just the amount of money that's getting tossed around for these guys. And it sucks because when, like coming into my like realm, it's like when you look at the injury line, like I was watching, McCaffrey last year and I was like, this is fantastic, but this is horrible.
Mhm.
Like something's got to break. Like you can't be running for this amount of yardage. And I mean, people were laying in on him last year. Like he was getting drilled and he was getting right back up. And a running back's lifespan anyway, or career span, is only about 3 to 5 years. Actually,
Well,
that's the average for the players.
mhm.
But, running backs obviously take a hell of a lot more abuse. So like I'm kind of curious, like what's going to happen to Saquon next year? Like, what is he going to look like? Because everybody's all jacked off all these records and they're trying to let him run until his little heart's content. And, is he going to end up, I don't know, sneezing and ripping a hammy next year
Mhm.
or something like that? Because I don't know how long it takes you to recover from
Mhm.
getting hit. Like, I mean, these guys do it. Well, now it's stupid, right? When you look at the schedule, because we got Monday games, we got Thursday games, we got, Sunday games, sometimes.
Occasional Saturday or Friday games, depending on
Right.
if it's a special occasion.
So
Like
how do
Black,
you do
yeah.
this? Like, how do you go and play a Sunday game? And then if Christmas is on Wednesday, like, all right, so the coaches are doing them a favor and not playing, not practicing, probably just running through, going over film or doing whatever. But
But
it's
that
like,
doesn't.
I got to
Yeah.
get back and play and get hit
Mhm.
again.
Yeah. It's it's crazy because I guess now's the time a good time just to get into the current state of the NFL because the this season I'm kind of curious because for me, if you could describe the NFL season this year in one word, what would it be? Because mine was probably injuries. That was the big
Hmm.
thing, is because it feels like there were some teams that were just absolutely decimated by injuries this year. I'm looking at the 49ers in particular, got eviscerated. It felt like a solid third to half the team. There was
Oh,
an
for sure.
injury that came up all the time, but between the usage that a lot of these players get, the decrease in time for recovery, and the increase in a game, which player safety, but we're going to add another game because
Right. And
money,
they're talking
there's
about adding more, right?
yeah, because there's money to be had, because the NFL is king right now when it comes to sports leagues in America, and any way that you can continue to capitalize that, they're going to take advantage of it. And you add into also all these international games as well. I'm sure that takes a toll on the body too, because that just makes you more exhausted and makes the recovery time harder. So to
Right.
me, that's kind of what I think of this season, unfortunately. How about you? What's What's something that kind of stands out to you about this NFL season?
Chaos.
Yeah. Hmm.
It's been a really weird season. I mean, just between, especially the injuries, like, as you're talking about, like Detroit, where they have like 17 players out or something like
Hmm.
that for their playoff game. And it's like kind of disappointing that they lost. But when you're like, oh, we're down that many players, 49ers, the coaching issue is clearly a problem. But it feels like it was so chaotic. Like it was just one thing after the other that was happening. Some of the injuries were just insane, and watching guys' knees and, whatever. And it's hard to watch because of the fact, like you said, that, they're trying to extend the season out, which I absolutely like. I get it from a money standpoint. It's like you want to go ahead and milk that cow as long as you can. On the other end, it's like you're sacrificing these players, and how long are they going to last? Like,
Right.
Mahomes this year is
Oh,
right. I mean,
very much so. He was on one of my fantasy football teams, and that was a disaster.
yeah,
Absolute disaster.
I had one game where he had 9 points.
Yep.
I was
Yep.
like, how do you get 9? And then at one point during the game, when I checked, it was like -5. And I was like, oh,
What is this? What is happening right
yeah.
now? And
So, yeah, it's bad.
yeah, that
you
was
know
rough.
but it feels chaotic. It's like upside down, right? Like the things that we're expecting that were going to be like solid and good were not solid and good, and then things you weren't expecting, like, I didn't expect Detroit to have the season. Like I thought they'd be solid, but man, they came roaring out. But again, it's like, I think when you're coaching and you're expecting, like, you're winning, you want to keep all your guys in, and then the broken finger is not a big deal or whatever, but
Hmm.
then it becomes a wrist thing, and then
Yep.
so and so gets drilled, and then their shoulder hurts, and the stinger keeps going on, and it just like piles on. And it made it super weird to watch because you just didn't know what you were watching.
Hmm.
And I think probably the weirdest thing was watching the Chiefs win in these weird, like the Chiefs and the Eagles, they won in some weird ass ways and have like the most amazing records, but didn't dominate.
Oh no,
Like,
no. They were pedestrian at best at times during the season. And luckily, you're seeing a little bit of life from the Eagles, and you're seeing just like a small amount of life from the Chiefs. Not confident enough to be like, yeah, you're gonna win your three in a row. This
right,
coveted thing that you've been gunning for all year, but I don't feel confident in the Chiefs at all. And on the flip side, you also have a number of teams that are finding confounding ways to lose as well. Like, look, as
Tampa Bay.
oh, Tampa, yeah, that was rough. Raiders had a couple of ones. It's like, how did you lose that? And I have to call out my Bears as well, because the Bears they found all kinds of different ways to lose games. Lose it, like having this awesome comeback and losing in overtime, missing a field goal against
Yeah,
your arch rival who you haven't beat in what feels like 50,000 years, and you still find a way to lose. You lose on a Hail Mary against your rival quarterback in the same draft class. And then you have a head coach who just doesn't know how to manage time. And
right. That was probably the worst one, where you're like, dude, how did you not know?
it was the worst, but what was more sad about it is that it was totally expected because he's had a history of just mismanaging the clock.
You
Like,
sound like a Raider fan, man.
well, if you think about it, when's the last time the Raiders had a lot of success?
When Chucky was there.
Yeah.
The
So,
first time or the second time. I can't remember what time it was. It was when, remember, because he left and he went to Tampa Bay,
mhm.
and then the Raiders played Tampa Bay in the Super
Super
Bowl.
Bowl, yeah.
And but it was his Raider team,
Hmm.
essentially, right? That won,
Yeah,
because it was all the people he drafted and put together. So he was essentially playing against himself. But that
right.
was the last time that they've had any kind of coaching. I mean, and that's, the Raiders have like a Dallas problem, where your owner is way too deep in everyday decision making,
Hmm.
and the coaches can't coach. They had a good coach this year, and they dumped him, and I was like, damn, I thought, like, at least give him another year to work stuff out, and they didn't do it. And I feel bad, because
Hmm.
I felt like like, even though they sucked, like, because of course there was one point where you're like, all right, if you keep losing, we'll get the number one draft and then this will be really good.
Yeah.
Right. Because of course everybody wants what's his name and Travis, right? They want them as a pair to
Yeah.
go somewhere, which is probably not going to happen because, it's just not going to work out that way.
Right.
But there was some like weird hope for that.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden he motivated them and they started winning. And then we were like, what the hell are you doing now? Like now we're just going to be a regular team in the draft. And the
Mhm.
Giants did the same thing. Like they
Oh
had
my
the
God.
ability. And then all of a sudden they were like, oh, we're just going to
No,
piss
we're
this away.
well, I'm very grateful that the Houston Texans decided to win that one game that ended up eventually landing us Caleb Williams because
Right.
thanks for that, Lovey. One last gift to Chicago for that, but I'm sure all the Texans fans are like, "What are you doing? Like,
Right.
what is happening right now?" But one because I like to watch a lot of TV, and
Mhm.
TV right now has this trend where seasons are getting a shorter and shorter leash to find its audience. And that feels like it's the same thing in football is that quarterbacks and coaches, and just like any player, if you're not performing up to the capabilities and the speed that the game is going, you're going to get yanked quicker than usual. And unlike other sporting leagues, there's not a whole lot of other options if you don't succeed in the NFL. You could go to the XFL if you want. You could play Canadian football, I guess, but there's there's nothing else out there. So you find yourself out of the league and without a job and you're just hopping around from practice squads. The leash for some of these players is just so unbelievably short and so unbelievably unrealistic at times. And it's kind of ridiculous.
But let me ask you a question because, I mean, when you're talking about the NFL, you have to talk about college.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
now with NIL money and also the changing of the years, right? The eligibility years and everything else, like why would I go to the NFL?
That's
I
that
mean,
is
maybe there's a potential for more money, but like I don't know what Shadur made, this year, but
mhm,
last year he made $34 million. Like you are 21, maybe
mm,
20, 21 years old, and you made $34 million in NIL money,
yeah.
and my alma mater got slaughtered because they weren't in the game, and that's Florida State, and they got, I mean, it was probably the worst season that they've had in I don't even know how long. I mean, I went in 92, so it was before that because Bobby
Well,
Bowden did okay. Like he sucked at times,
mm,
especially when he was like close to 80, but they were still like 500.
mhm,
That was sucking, right? It was like,
yeah.
oh damn, we're 500, and we didn't get invited to a bowl, or actually, I don't even know. I think they got invited to bowls every time, and
Mhm.
this is the first year where it's like, nah, you're not going anywhere. You guys are horrible.
Well, but don't forget also that, well, like I'm sure you don't because it's your alma mater, but Florida State got absolutely hosed last year by not getting selected to play in the playoffs.
Right.
That doesn't help either, which I'm glad that you brought up the current state of college football right now because that that's coming into play as well. And you're seeing people sit out. So I remember when it started to become a thing where people sat out bowl games so that they could get ready for the NFL. Now people are sitting out bowl games because they're getting ready to transfer somewhere else.
Right.
And the everything with NIL and everything with the transfer portal is just the wild, wild west right now. And football's at kind of at a weird crossroads right now, right? So I'm curious to just see where it kind of pans out because are you going to see less talented people or less talented players go into the NFL draft because they see it an opportunity to get in, but they won't be ready? And these players that are making bank on NIL deals, or doesn't it feel like only a matter of time before players are just getting officially paid? And
It,
like,
it feels that way. I mean, that's like I said, that's how, Florida State got nailed, is
mhm,
that they just weren't throwing down cash. I mean,
yeah,
yes, people want to go there because of the legacy, but they don't have the legacy that like Alabama has, and so people aren't just going to go necessarily for the name, especially if I can go somewhere else. I mean, it it feels like the NFL, where you're like, okay, you've spent one season at Oregon, then you went to Cal, then it's like, okay, I can't keep track of who you are. And again, it brings us back to that whole like, oh, I got to just be a fan of you as a player.
Yeah.
Because I can't really, I mean, you're hoping that college fans stick with their teams because you want your teams. But like Florida State picked up a quarterback that they were like, he's amazing. He's 5-star quarterback. And it's like, no, he's not. I don't know what stars he got him from or whatever, but he sucked. Like he
Right.
was bad. And they've had like average quarterbacks before, right? But this year was like, damn, And then of course you have Jameis, who is his own planet.
Yeah. Yeah, just a little bit.
Did you see his little TikTok where he was like trying to
No.
sell crab legs?
Oh my God. Oh my God.
What is your football meal? Like the crab legs? And I was like, oh, that's amazing. It's like nothing like you exploiting the fact that you were a goofy thief in college and now, it's like
love the awareness that some people have, and just, TikTok has been simultaneously like the best and the worst thing for athletes because it increases their reach, and athletes are getting super famous just by being on TikTok. There's a couple NBA players right now that are more known for being on TikTok than they are for actually playing, which floors me to no other, but it's the same thing with football, and this much exposure to everybody's personal life just sometimes gets people in trouble, and some people
right.
just don't understand the awareness, like
Shannon Sharp.
can't
Cringy as hell.
I know it's
But it's, but I also like the commentary because there's a lot of times where I'm sitting there and I'm like, what did I just see? And then you hop on TikTok and they're like, what happened in this play? Did you see this? And it's like, okay, so I'm not the only person that's going like, what the hell is that? So there is that camaraderie that I wouldn't have, because even like, I don't, California is funny, like we have our football fans and, but it's not insane. Like in New Jersey, like it's insane. Like you go out on a Sunday and if there's Giants playing, nobody's out. Right? Like everybody's home, they're watching, Monday morning, you go to the little deli or the cafe and you're sitting down and it's like everybody's bitching about the game, totally, armchair quarterbacking it, armchair coaching, the whole deal. And it's here, it's like there's a couple people like here and there, but it's not as like ingrained as a part of the society as it is, on the East Coast.
Well, particularly in LA, who didn't have two NFL teams 10 years ago. Now they have two, and still nobody cares about football in LA. LA is a Laker town and a Dodger town. That's it. So why they feel the need to get two NFL teams money that I don't get it. I don't, but
The Rams were almost worth the money, right? Like they did okay, but they
well,
had injuries.
they had injuries, and then they made it into the playoffs. They lost last week, but at least they continued to excel, and at least the post Aaron Donald Rams, like for them to do anything after he's retired, cool, good for them. And
Right.
now they're in a situation where Matt Stafford has to think about stuff and see if he's still in it for the game. He's got a Super Bowl ring. He brought a Super Bowl win to LA, and
He's fragile.
I mean, yeah, he is, and he's also just getting up there in age. And if it's kind of weird saying that when we have Aaron Rodgers playing until he's 40 and then Tom Brady playing until he's like 45. Like,
right.
I never would have thought that like a 40-year-old would still continue to play in the NFL. And Tom Brady at least won something. Aaron Rodgers looks very washed right now.
Yeah. But Tom Brady is like the Wayne Gretzky of football. Like, one of the things that allowed Wayne to play so long was the fact that he was so fast, he didn't get hit. And he was, that was great. And then when he started to slow down, he started to get hit. And also when he started to slow down, then there was also that feeling bad. right? Like, I don't want to hit him because he's a future Hall of Famer kind of
Right.
thing, kind of deal. And I feel like people were like that with Brady, is that they at first were probably trying to headhunt a little bit and then got, all the flags, which that was one of the things that kind of came out in the last couple of weeks, especially about Mahomes. It's like, because he's coming and he's taking like flopping to like almost
Oh,
professional soccer level. And it's pretty like entertaining to watch. Like
I will
him,
have to agree with you on that. I mean,
but he didn't get like I think that's what allowed Brady to play, is that he really took, plus he had money. So, I'm sure he's doing all the things, right? Like getting the massages, getting the chamber, right? Like if you ever watched the Netflix thing where they did the whole quarterback
oh
stuff
yes, yes.
and you watch all the stuff, it's like, you got cash. Yeah, I can go ahead and be in, the suit. I can't, was it Norman Tech that does the, compression leg thing, and, like all the toys to allow you to continue to play and get healthier faster than you would if you were just, you or me who sprained an ankle or whatever may have happened.
Well,
But I also think that Tom was protected a lot, and that
mhm.
allowed him to play. Rodgers, I mean, I don't know, I don't feel like he got so protected like with the Packers. Like I think he got drilled a little bit, but I don't know. He has a different personality. Like Tom always was outraged, like
Oh
somebody
yes.
touched, right? He'd get upset over
Mhm,
everything. And I think just people didn't hit him that hard. And you look at it, but you always have to wonder about the lines. It's
mhm.
like, how much do I like you? Like when you're watching quarterbacks get drilled, and I always think of what's his name? And I can't remember his last, Elvis, who played for the 49ers. Like there were times he was running for his life the
Mm.
entire time. And I was like, those boys don't like him.
No, no.
They're just like, step aside,
Mhm.
let him get drilled, you know.
Yeah, both Rodgers and Brady, they both had the benefit of also like great offensive lines and
Mhm.
great schematics when it comes to an offensive game as well.
Right.
So that certainly did help. And I mean, you're right, Rodgers did not get the same protection that Tom Brady has, but I don't think anybody's ever going to get that same level of protection. Like Mahomes is getting up there and he's getting close. And I got to admit, I feel like some of the outrage that people were talking about last week, the Texans were like, this game was stolen from us. I'm like, no, your team also wasn't that great as
You got to score
well.
points, dude.
Last I checked, I heard that's really important, and I appreciate you validating that for me. So the Texans didn't have enough firepower when like half of their wide receiver core got hurt most of the season. And
Right.
CJ Stroud was
Okay.
okay. Yeah, that's a little bit of a sophomore slump, and he's gonna bounce back. I hope, at least. Maybe the league has just figured him out. And doesn't that happen a lot with rookie quarterbacks where once there's a lot of tape and people can figure out, your nuances, the things that you do, then it makes things increasingly difficult, which is why there's a small part of me that thinks that both Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels are probably in for rough seasons next year because they both caught some people by surprise this year, particularly
Hmm.
Jaden Daniels. He's in the NFC Championship game. That never happens for a rookie quarterback. And it's not to say that like he was the one that was always the one that's keeping the team in it because, well, kind of. He's making a lot of great plays and he's doing a lot of amazing things. But next year, I like,
They're going to have him figured out.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And I
It's like
don't.
Brock Purdy. They had Brock Purdy figured out last year.
Mhm,
Like, and he had to work it out, and it's, you can ride that unknown thing. It's just like pitchers, right? It's like you can go through 102 miles an hour and that's great. And then as soon as somebody goes, oh, I just need to do this, or when it's, 0-2, you throw here, and then you're done. And then all
mhm,
of a sudden your ERA is 12 or something. So,
right.
these guys are the same way. And
Mhm,
but I think it's the coaching that makes the difference, right? Is that, you know, when you look at people who can't overcome that, who do, like, basically they have their great first year, their second year they're like and then their third year is then they're done, because and that's the thing, like, college football's like their season's long too.
Mm-hmm.
When you start looking at it, it wasn't that long. And now all of a sudden, the championship game was last week or this week, at the beginning of this week. And it's like, this is the third week of January and they're, still playing, and so there's somebody that's there that's going to take your job. And, if you're not getting it figured out so that you can handle yourself, then you're going to have some issues and you're not going to last very long. I mean, who's lasting long right now? When you look at most of the teams, it's like everybody's got fairly young quarterbacks and, like we talked about,
Yeah.
Certain people are on their way out.
Yeah, for sure.
You
So
know.
speaking of that, so Notre Dame, they went 14-2. So 16 games.
That's a lot.
That is a lot. And considering that the UConn, which like I'm looking at records for like these, independent or like ones that aren't like affiliated with like a major conference. The next one is like 9-4. So they had to play all these extra games. And I think that slightly contributed to why Notre Dame lost the national championship game, but also because Ohio State felt inevitable after a little while. But
look who played. It was
yeah,
because what was Notre Dame was ranked 9,
yeah,
right? And Ohio State was 8.
yeah.
So like, and the bye week didn't help anybody.
No,
Right.
no,
And
absolutely not.
that was made it weird because you're like, oh, this is what's going to happen. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, damn, you guys got rest or whatever, got, maybe weirded out and freaked out. And then all of a sudden you can't even play, and that threw a thing. And the other thing is like their season's incredibly long. Like I'm in college and, I got finals and I got all that stuff to worry about. And now my season starts because I mean, honestly, they start probably in a couple of weeks, right? March is, when they start and they'll get ready for spring ball. Then they have a little bit of time off and then the season starts in August. Some people like, really early August. And then they're playing until January.
Mhm.
Before the max was like with a bowl game, you were playing 12 games.
That's it. Yeah. And
So 4 extra games, and that's, and depending on the timeline, that could be anywhere from a month to 2.5 months of extra play,
yeah.
plus you're adding in practices and, and it's a lot to balance. And, I mean, some of the guys are graduate students too. So I imagine you got dissertations that you're writing,
I
you
mean,
know.
7th year red shirt, like whatever.
Well, think
You
about it with the junior college stuff, like
Mhm.
you can end up playing ball for 6 years,
Yeah.
you know.
Easily. Yeah.
And that's like, how is that going to affect the draft? Like before you're getting like 20-year-olds or, whatever, like, I don't want to play my senior year or something like that. Now you're going to like, are you going to get like 25-year-olds in the draft? Like who's going to draft a 25-year-old running back,
Probably a team like Jacksonville who just doesn't know what they're doing and is like, "Oh, you seem acceptable,
You
I
have
guess.
you have a pulse
You have a pulse and you want to be here. You're
and
in."
you can run forward. Yay.
Well, and it's interesting because in the NBA, the age for the draft that people are like, "Ooh, I don't know if I want to do that," is 23. Like if you're 23, there's a lot of hesitancy to draft you. And
Right.
now
Unless you
that
came from Europe.
unless you came from Europe and you may have potentially gotten like drafted and stashed for a little while, but
Hmm.
yeah, it's crazy to think that with football players, they're playing more, they're going to be drafted older, and you're probably going to see an influx of players that are going to be like, I'm 29, I'm good. Because already starting to see that where players are like, I'm not sure how much longer I want to
Yeah.
do this and I want to keep putting my body through this. And players who are just like preventatively retiring because they know that I don't want to be 35 and not be able to enjoy my time with either my family or my money or my
Well, the CTE
to,
thing I'm definitely plays, and the NFL has no, I don't know how to put this nicely.
oh,
I don't think that they don't give a
don't. Who
fuck.
cares? No, they
They
don't.
don't give a fuck. Like once you're out, and these players are not getting taken care of. And I'm not talking about, like Tom Brady's always going to be taken care of. So if he's down the line, he has CTE, then he will be cared for, and he has plenty of money to take care of his kids and all that other stuff. I'm talking about the linemen. and the guys that are constantly getting their heads banged, even at a low level, right? Because as a fan, we're just watching it and we're just seeing the big concussions, right? We're seeing the big hits. Oh, he went into a concussion test. But, when you're looking at kind of like boxing, right? It's like this constant pummeling, right? If I'm an offensive lineman, my helmet's getting hit every play, maybe multiple times. And so your brain is like, smacking around in your skull, and that's injury.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit of scar tissue, and then it's a little bit of scar tissue, and your brain's going to do what it needs to do to protect itself, but then pretty soon you can't remember how to brush your teeth or what your kid's name is, and stuff like that. And the depression is real. I don't know if you watch what is it, the Special Forces show? Have you seen that?
No, I
Oh,
haven't
you
seen
got to
it.
watch it. You have to
Nice.
watch it. So
Nice.
Cam Newton's on it,
Oh.
and Golden Tate. And so for those of you who don't know what it is, it's basically a game show for celebrities to go and learn how to be special forces operatives. So they have a mix of like US guys and British guys, and they run them through all these different drills, and they
Nice.
totally, essentially humiliate them for our entertainment. And so Cam Newton's in there, and I don't think I realized how big he is. Like, he's a huge dude.
Yeah.
And, so he's like, there's the one thing where he like is hanging off the side of a helicopter, and he pretty much just like pulls himself up into the belly of the copter, and you're like, damn, like that's some real strength that he can do. But the funny part, and he was never my favorite, Golden Tate is in there, and his big thing is that he has no purpose, and when you look at him, he's a fairly young dude, just couldn't play anymore, and he's really like, he's doing this challenge because he wants to find his purpose, and he really just doesn't know what to do. And I think that's the problem with a lot of sports, is that we're not getting people like, they're not getting like career counseling,
No.
like when I was in the military, and when you leave, like you get like some, like this counseling that you get to, like, okay, you're
Shit.
transitioning to a civilian world, here are your options. This is what you could do, that kind of stuff. And I think when our players are done, we're like, thanks for the
Goodbye.
memories.
Well,
See you
it's
later.
unless you're going into coaching, unless you're
Right.
going into broadcasting, where you feel that there's like a natural career path. But for everybody else, because I don't know if you know this, but there's a shitload of players in the NFL. Did you know that? Because and there are so many of them that after they're done, they're, like you said, they're left with nothing, and then it's like, well, what do I do now? And it's not just you're getting kicked out of the nest, you're getting kicked out of the nest, and then the nest goes on lockdown. And like I also feel for like a lot of players when they get injured, because when they get injured, the isolation that
It's
you read
stupid.
about is crazy. That if a lot of them are made to feel like they have to like recover on their own, and they're not, like, they don't feel like they're part of the team. And isn't that when you probably need to be part of the team the most, is when you're injured and you need a little bit of help?
But you're a commodity, not a person,
Oh yeah.
and that's,
Oh,
and
yeah,
we
that's right.
forget about that, right? Because, we have our allegiances and whatever, but it's really, it's not like you did me a service and
Mhm.
now you're unable to provide that service. So I need to move on to the next service.
Yeah.
I mean, again, Trey Lance, right? It's like,
Yeah.
one 49er should have never drafted him. So let's put that out
Let's
there.
let's just establish that
Let's establish that right off the bat.
Mhm.
Like, he didn't play a whole year, and you're like, he'd be a great guy. And
He's
it's like,
fine. It'll be all good.
and then you have him, and you're trying. They're trying. He was trying so hard, right? He was trying so hard, and he wasn't there. Then he gets hurt, and then all of a sudden Brock Purdy's in there, right? And then boom, and then you're done, right? So you get hurt, you're no longer consideration, and then bye. I mean, hell, that's how Tom Brady got in, right? So, I mean, that's what happens, is that thing. And I don't even know, like, whatever happened to Drew. Like, I can't remember where he went after the Patriots got rid of him. I can't remember where he went,
I don't.
but then he was
I-
done.
He
was like,
he was.
doom.
I don't think he was ever the same after
No.
that. And then yeah, he probably didn't do much of note, and then he was just like, fuck this, I'm done then.
Yeah.
So, oh man, I recently went to Australia and New Zealand because my wife's from New Zealand, and one of the things that they they ask me a lot is they ask her family is they ask me about American football because they're all big fans of rugby. And they're like, why do NFL players launch themselves at people and treat their helmets like a weapon? I'm like, well, that's a good question because they point out how in rugby they teach effective tackling technique where you're not aiming for the head, you're not aiming to hurt, you're aiming to get the player down. That's kind of a key difference there. And like I tried to talk about how it's a combination of a lot of things. It's that youth sports doesn't prioritize the proper tackling technique. There's less players who or there's less kids who either want to play football or their parents aren't allowing them to play football because they're scared of the ramifications of getting hurt. And
Right.
then in college, there's like college and the NFL, there's so many different rules that penalize defenders from hitting like any player in like the wrong spot. And it's been an adjustment. I've seen some difference, like defenses are like trying a lot harder to try and not hit players lower body, upper body. But hey, when you're going super fast and you've got a split-second decision, like, whoops, I accidentally hit someone. I didn't do it maliciously, or maybe some did do it maliciously. I don't know, but I am seeing a slight difference with defensive players trying at least to be more mindful and respectful of the quote unquote safety that the NFL is trying to institute.
I think probably the biggest difference between NFL football and rugby is equipment.
Oh yeah.
That if NFL players had no equipment like rugby, they would not hit the same way.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Right? I mean,
Mhm.
that's the number one thing is that, I'm not gonna, if I'm a rugby player, one, I mean, the game is played differently. So I guess you could, right? If somebody's taken off, you could try to like drill them. But I'm not leading with my head if I don't have anything on my head.
Yeah.
Like I'm not doing that,
Mhm.
and because I want to play.
Yeah.
And if even when you look at rugby players and how they're built, I mean, they are very differently built. There's a lot more emphasis on, standing strength, right? Of just you and I pushing up against each other and just grinding away. And that doesn't always happen. NFL is pretty.
Yeah.
We wear helmets, we have pads. They're supposed to protect us. Like I was at a card show this weekend and I saw a picture of Dion on, one of the old Fleer NFL cards. And, his pads were like the size of Texas. They were
Of course.
huge.
Of course they
And I was
are.
like, oh, damn, that's right. I remember like when the pads were so huge and,
Mhm.
all that stuff. But then it became confining, right? To have to run around with that big equipment. And, when you think about it, like thigh pads, like, the thigh pads were big and, now it's like everything's really small because the sport is built for speed. But the flip side is that, you're going to get hit. Right. And getting hit by somebody who's got a top speed of 25 miles an hour, running into you, while
It's
you're looking up
it,
or, whatever, like that's
it's
insane.
it's gonna hurt. It's gonna
Yeah.
hurt a lot. And if these pads aren't as insulated as they were before, and it's so sad that not there aren't a lot of NFL players who want to wear that specially designed helmet to help with
The Guardian
concussions.
helmet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's too bad because
Have you seen
it's
the new ones?
no, I
Oh
haven't.
yeah, so I think they're gonna do because the mock-up I saw was for Georgia Tech. It's neat. It looks like a helmet, so it's like different It's almost like the padding inside the helmet is outside the helmet, so it doesn't look like I'm like a Jetson with this big dome on my head that nobody
Right.
wants to wear because it looks dorky as hell,
It does.
and that somebody's spouse is probably saying, you know what, we got 3 kids, your ass better be wearing that helmet, kind of thing. You're not leaving me alone. But the new ones look a little bit sleeker. It looks like probably something that somebody would be willing to wear as opposed to something that looks like it was just pulled over the regular helmet, and looks like a, Halloween costume,
That's
because it
fair.
is about looks.
It 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 totally is, and it's a little sad that that matters, but we live in America. That stuff matters. unfortunately. And it is what it is. We just kind of have to deal with it, right? Kind
This
of.
is true.
So it is NFL championship weekend this weekend. Who you got for the
Oh,
games?
I'm thinking Philly.
Yeah.
Yeah, just because the experience is there, and I think they'll do it. And then I honestly think Kansas City, like, we're gonna have. I mean, they're going to be fantastic games because when you look at records and stuff like that, like they're pretty evenly matched. I think Kansas City's probably going to pull it out. So I think we're going to have a Philly Kansas City Super Bowl,
Mm.
which will be interesting.
It will be interesting, and I'm predicting the same thing. I think Saquon Barkley is just dialed in, and I think he's just on a tear right now. And I really feel for my Giants fans when I look at how well Saquon Barkley is doing. And
Found a new life.
yeah, it's interesting what can happen when you're in a different environment and there's winning to be done as well.
Well, and he's got a great line because what is it? I heard one of the statistics. They're saying it's like he gets at least 2 yards before he gets touched, and that's your line.
God, that's amazing.
Yeah, that's your line. Your line's taking care of you, and he's got a really good line, and they're making some really big holes for him, and I love it. Like, again, as a fan, it's fantastic to watch. Like, it
Mhm.
sucks for the Giants, but they didn't kind of respect him, so he's like, peace out.
Yeah,
And it's even more painful that he stayed on the same coast and
in the same division
division.
where you got to see him
Yeah,
twice a year, and
yeah.
that is a bit of a bummer. And
Yeah. But that was a message, right? Like, if you're a guy who's like, screw those guys, I'm never coming back. Like, you're like going, you're trying to leave. And he stayed close.
oh yes, very very much so.
Watch me work.
And in regards to Chiefs Bills, look, the Bills have had a good season, but they're by no means like giant killers or anything like that. It felt, if it wasn't for that Mark Andrews drop, which that gutted me a lot for a variety of
Poor
reasons,
guy.
because that kind of felt like you already had a rough season as it is. And doesn't that feel just like that was probably something that might be your last play for the
Poor
Ravens?
guy.
Yeah, absolutely. And he just came out with some quotes like, "This guts me. This is really rough." And I really feel for the guy, and I love that not only Bills Mafia supported him a little bit, but also that everybody on the Ravens, like, we didn't lose because he dropped that
Yeah.
pass.
That would have been spectacular for them if he pulled it off.
Yeah. And I would have loved to have seen the Ravens advance, because I cannot stand the narrative that what's his name? Lamar.
Jackson.
Yeah, God, I kept saying like Lamar Jones. Like, no, that's not his name. That Lamar Jackson just can't get it done in the playoffs, even though he has struggled a lot in the playoffs. But like the Ravens were just kind of a flawed team most of the year, and the Bills kind of caught a break in that, because it's not like their defense was spectacular or anything like that during that game. So it feels like Chiefs Eagles feels like the way it's going to go. I'm not sure how it would feel if Washington were to get to the Super Bowl, for a couple reasons. One, I've got a lot of mouthy Washington Commanders fans. So I'm not sure I could live in a world where they have the upper hand. But then again, also I have a lot of Eagles fans that like to puff out their chest every time, because it's Philly, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah. If you're not offended, then too bad.
yeah, oh yeah, for sure. So it's rough, because we talked a little bit about this before. I would have loved to see the Lions get to the Super Bowl, because that franchise feels like it was cursed for a long
Yes.
time, and it would have been nice to see that. Hey, a great example for any NFL team out there is, like, if you think you're in purgatory right now, you just got to have the stars align for you, and you got to get a great coach and great skill players. And dare I say, Lions are probably what, quarterback away at this point, because Jared Goff was serviceable. He was great at times this season, but clock struck midnight and he just had a rough game at the wrong time.
Well, last couple of games, I imagine he's hurt.
Oh yeah.
Is for the amount of interceptions that he's thrown, and one he ended up winning,
Hmm.
like, and he was my other quarterback on my fantasy, so he was destroying me.
Yeah.
But they're getting cannibalized. their
Mhm.
coaching staff.
Oh yeah.
And so I don't like, as much as I want to say like, damn, the Lions they got it dialed in. But when you're losing coaches, that also messes stuff up,
Hmm.
because the continuity is not there.
Yeah.
And, you hope, right? Yeah, the same head coach, but man, how many guys are on a football team? You got 100 that at least show up, and then, you got your practice squad and everything else. So a lot of it are these coaches,
Mhm.
who are working and how they see the games and, everything else, right? Like, I can look at film, but if I have a coach that's really, spot on, I'm going to see film very differently, with different personalities or, whatever may happen. And, the same thing happened with the 49ers, right? Is that they were doing great for a couple of years, couldn't pull it off. And then they just got same thing. Their defensive coaches, it was like, you're a great coach. Bye. You're a great
Mhm.
coach, And so you look at all the stuff and everybody's gone now. And
Yeah.
now you're left with no coaching.
Well, and then
And
to build up that continuity and that program, it does help if you have it consistently instead of what you see as another trend is that, it's very quick to just fire a coach and then just leave the same players, but then the team still sucks because they have to relearn the scheme, relearn a whole different playbook, like everything. And then you're wondering, it's like, why does this team still suck? Like, because there's been no continuity. I'm looking at
right.
you, Chicago Bears, and various other teams. So, all right.
You just have
I,
to embrace the lack of continuity like a Raider fan.
yeah, that's very true. All right. Last question I have for you is that if you are predicting Eagles and Chiefs to advance, who you got in the Super Bowl?
Oh, fuck. So, yeah, I would choose the Chiefs because they're probably going to get the calls. And I don't think the Eagles have the power. Like, I don't think they have enough in their toolbox to be able to outplay them. I think
Hmm.
it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be like a fun game to watch to see
Hmm.
what's going to happen. I don't know if it's going to be a high scoring game because we haven't been seeing that high flying offense of, 30, 40 points from everybody. And if they are, they're giving it up
Yeah,
too,
for sure.
that's the thing. It's like, there's no 45 to nothing games or,
Hmm.
whatever. It's like, 29 to 27 or some crap like that,
Hmm.
because we got a safety, it's just, I think it'll be close, but I would love for the Eagles to do well because I'm more of an NFC kind of person.
Yeah.
Uh, but I don't, they just don't have the offense, and God forbid something happens to Saquon and you're going to watch the Eagles look like shit.
Yep, pretty much. And the only other thing that I'll contribute to that is I think that the Chiefs have the coaching advantage as well because Nick Sirianni is the wild card in all of this. Because some
Always.
I felt like Nick Sirianni was going to get fired mid-year, and now it's like you've got him one game, you've got the Eagles one game away from the Super Bowl. Like, why on earth would you let this guy go? And I don't know, maybe it's going to be a giant pissing match, kind of similar to what happened to Harbaugh at the 49ers. It's like, well,
Right.
Harbaugh wanted more power, but the GM was like, nah, dude, you can go. You're fine. And then he heads to Michigan. He wins a national title there.
Natty.
That's a little tainted, but hey, he won it. And then the 49ers have just,
And shit.
yeah. So, well, Dana, thank you so much for talking to me about football. Greatly appreciate your insight and greatly appreciate the conversation. Plug your stuff. Where can people find you? And if they want to continue the conversation and just listen to your podcast.
So you can find me on all the socials, Pain Free Athlete Podcast. Yeah. And I'm just, if you're somebody who's suffering from pain, have a chronic injury or something like that, there's an episode for you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Appreciate the conversation and looking forward to potentially talking with you more in the future, especially baseball, because I've got thoughts on baseball.
I got all kinds of thoughts about baseball. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. This has been fun. I love chatting about sports just because, I don't know, it's like our life, right?
Hmm.
It's like, it's my timeline, it's my what do you call it? Time capsule, right?
Yeah.
It's like all the memories of different plays and different teams and all that kind of stuff. And it's fun talking to somebody who has the same kind of passion.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I very much looking forward to just continuing the conversation from here.
Sweet. Thank you.
That's going to do it for this episode of Sportsball. Be sure to like, rate, and subscribe to anything and everything SPDM Crew, wherever you get your podcast. Join us on social media on Facebook, Instagram, X, Threads, YouTube, and Blue Sky at SPDM Crew. Check out our website at spdmcrew.com. Shout out to High Flyer Creative Studios for making our awesome logo. Greatly appreciate their support. And if you have any marketing, logo, or brand standard needs, contact them at highflyercreative.com. Check out our other shows on our podcast feed. We've got a lot of different shows that people can listen to, whether we're talking about movies, TV, comics, physical media collections. We just launched one on J.R.R. Tolkien, and then we also have just a lot of great shows to watch. So subscribe to all of those. If you've got a podcast idea or you're interested in being part of the SPDM Crew as a guest or collaborating, email us at spdmcrew@gmail.com. Until next time, pain heals, chicks dig scars, glory lasts forever.